Good day and welcome, America and beyond. I'm Tom Donahue for Tom Donahue Reports. Truth matters. It really does matter here. And I was just listening to Roger Stone on Alex Jones. And, you look at the dark past and secrets of this mysterious Roger Stone. Now, he's been able to rehab his image from the Nixon black op days and the black bag days. But when you're a hired gun like that, and you've done dirty tricks and dirty deeds for a sinister president, which Nixon was, and Nixon was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he did play ball with the established order, but he became a little bit of a renegade towards the end. But I don't know if that had more to do with his drinking and his psychosis, or the fact that he just decided had some pangs of conscience. But nevertheless, anyone that would have such close ties to the Rockefellers and Henry Kissinger, beware. Remember, Henry Kissinger anointed Donald Trump during a meeting before he became president. So don't forget that. And we brought that up early on in that concern. I said, well, maybe he's just trying to play ball. He's trying to, he knew Kissinger through the social circles and political circles of New York City and Trump Tower and all that. But I think it went beyond that. And I think evidence seems to indicate that. So anyway, I decided to record this a little earlier. I may even pre-release this. But Roger Stone was being the PR mouthpiece for Trump, even though Trump said some pretty hellacious, vile, vicious things towards Alex Jones and other MAGA media influencers and program hosts. And he's trying to explain away things such as Melania's press conference relating to the Epstein files and how she knew nothing and had little or no contact with Maxwell or Epstein. Well, if I had those multiple photos of togetherness with them, it looked like double dating and clubbing with Epstein and Maxwell. If I signed a letter saying love Melania to Ghislaine Maxwell and saying that look forward to meeting up with you in Palm Beach, that's pretty friendly. And then these modeling agencies and the contacts that her people and Epstein had, and there's a lot of stuff starting to come out. So he was trying to clean that up. Then he was trying to explain, well, you wouldn't want Kamala Harris as president. It doesn't matter who else is president. If they're defiling the high office, if they're dishonoring and disobeying the Constitution of the United States, I don't care if it's Harris, Trump, Bush, Clinton, Obama, Biden, whomever, we're going to take them to task. But Alex Jones was doing a little bit of backpedaling because, he's got these contacts in the sphere of influence that include Roger Stone. I don't need and I don't care about having insider information and contacts. You can judge and you can evaluate and you can analyze things if you're in the know in terms of, having the right measuring stick, like the Constitution, like freedoms, rights, and truth. So again, I thought Jones, even though he came late to the party, and yeah, bullhorn bully, you came late in terms of standing up to Trump. I called for his removal, his impeachment, and his trial and conviction many, many months ago. I am not a believer in the lesser of two evils. I'm not a believer in party politics. It's about principles, and there's certain morals and certain standards that need to be met. So I don't look for any favors, and I don't look for any fortunes, and I don't need to be in that sphere of influence. So anyway, I thought it was absolutely disgraceful and distasteful, praising and allowing to be manipulated by Roger Stone. Now, I've heard him say some things. He said a lot of truth about Steve Bannon. He has said a lot of truth about the JFK assassination. So it doesn't mean because I take someone to task that they haven't done some good work. But how are they going to have credibility, which is believability, if they don't give you some good stuff? Now, I have said all along, I have never, ever trusted Alex Jones. He's probably more unhinged than Donald Trump. But is he doing some good work And does he have this so-called sphere of influence and contacts worthy of listening at times? Yes. But he's also going on other people's programs and podcasts stone cold drunk and disoriented. And then he is using language that there should be no teenagers, no children ever, or grandmothers listening to Alex Jones. So I don't know why he resorts to that, but to me, you're lower than pond scum. But yeah, I've seen him bully with his bullhorn, and I'm the one that coined that term. Hearkening back to the day when I was syndicated and I was on in Dallas and I was on in various markets around the country, and Alex Jones decided to start, which is really anybody with, and again, I guess it goes with podcasting and YouTubing and TikTok. You don't have to have particular talents. You don't have to have any expertise. You can just voice whatever you want to voice. But back then, there was public access TV on cable. And, you would just, I guess, go in and fill out a piece of paper and tell them this is what you wanted to do. And if they had availability, they had to put you on. So he had a public access program, and he wasn't conspiratorial at that time, but he did listen to programs like mine and others. And sadly, even though he, over the years, has given some good information, some good intel, he has been a propagandist and he has been an opportunist. Now, I have told many conspiracy theorists, many audience members, listeners, users, that I never thought that Jones was a government operative. I said that he was an opportunist. See, when someone is as unhinged as Alex Jones or as Donald Trump, they're renegades, so you can't control them completely, which to some degree is good, but they can be persuaded, manipulated, they can be diverted because of their proclivities and because of their vulnerabilities. So I've never went down that lane where I said, oh, he's working for the CIA, or he's working for the FBI, or he's a confidential informant. Early on, I said, I don't know, but I'm going to continue to dig deeper. And so my analysis over the last few years was that I came to the conclusion, and again, I can't say with 100% absolute certainty, that he's an opportunist. And, through the court filings, it came out that he made many, many, many millions of dollars off of his listeners. And you can see all that through his bankruptcies. And he's still begging for more money. So that he's not just saying he wants to cover the cost of his studio or his program cost. But when you can have a full staff to pay them, you pay yourself, you're supporting your family. And then you realize that, oh, he owns this, he owns that. Oh, he has this much money in the bank. No, it's just like the televangelist. He was stuffing his pockets. And again, he didn't do anything illegal, well, in that regard. It's just that he was misleading his audience when they thought that they were, that he was living a humble life and that they were just supporting his message and mission when you were supporting his own, personal aggrandizement, and building, his personal wealth. But yeah, I would say buyer beware when it comes to Roger Stone, and also believe about 50%. I think lately that percentage has gone up with Alex Jones because of some of the guests and some of the information. And the fact is that he's now made the shift, not completely, because today proved that with having Roger Stone on, being the apologist and trying to mislead us in terms of Trump's intentions. But if I was insulted the way Alex Jones was recently by Trump, I would not be so kind and try to be so forgiving. But people want to be in that sphere of influence, and Roger Stone will keep feeding him information and others. But let me just go to just a few things. These were long tweets. Or social media posts, I guess you have to say, because he's on Truth Social. Yeah, it's a fountain of disinformation. So truthful. Trump calls them nut jobs, low IQ troublemakers, and goes scorched earth on Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, and Candace Owens. Now, I know Trump went to an Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania, good school. I'm here in Pennsylvania. But, his father probably made certain donations, and again, I haven't had a chance to look at some point, I think I will, but no one's ever talked about his grades. Do you remember when they talked about Bush and John Kerry and they both went to Yale? They both were Skull and Bones, a whole other subject, which I have covered in detail in the past. Their grades were released. I'm not quite sure how they got them, but one had a great point that was, they had it numerical at that time, 77, the other 76. So Bush beat Kerry by like 1 point. So grades don't always tell the full story of how smart you are. But I can't imagine Trump getting great grades at UPenn and Wharton School. But I could be wrong. But just the way his lack of eloquence and his articulation and his repetitive nature. And he was always repeating himself, sort of like Hannity, over the years. It wasn't just because of onset dementia happening here now, which I believe to be the case. For him to attack, now Megyn Kelly, you can take her to task on a lot of things. If you don't think she's intelligent and highly educated and bright, similar to Laura Ingraham, you're mistaken. And Candace Owens, I don't know her education, but she's very eloquent and articulate and very bright and talented. I don't agree with her on everything, but she's doing some pretty good work, especially of late. And then Tucker Carlson, he lied about him. He was college educated. He went to 2 different schools. I looked it up. He does have a degree. They were smaller schools, which doesn't really matter whether they were smaller or larger, universities. But the point is, and I have taken Tucker Carlson to task on many things besides that chuckle. But he is a very bright and very articulate individual. Remember, he filled in for Pat Buchanan on Crossfire and did a reasonably good job. I used to call him the bow tie bozo, but not bozo because of intelligence, just because he was a defender of the Republican Party at that time. So when Trump throws around IQ, I think that he feels an intellectual deficit. And I believe that Trump feels that he's not intellectually superior to hardly anybody. And so I just love when nut jobs. Who's more of a nut job than Donald Trump? And Trump did bring up Sandy Hook. He brought up how discredited Alex Jones was, his bankruptcy, all these things. And then all of a sudden Roger Stone appears and is trying to make amends with Jones. And he's been the one that's been feeding him a lot of information. And Stone is still consulting and working as a bagman, and I say bagman, for Trump, sort of like Michael Cohen, the fixer, and, in the work he did. So to me, there's just a sleaze factor. And there's just, there's like getting in the gutter with some of these people. If you're in this arena doing programs in terms of political analysis and commentary, and you haven't made the complete shift from Donald Trump. Now, when I say make that shift or that flip, it doesn't mean go to the Democrats, because I never will. But Roger Stone is not a trustworthy, honorable person. He would do whatever it takes to get the job done. And I mean whatever. And so, but he is bright. He is articulate. He actually does a radio show. And he's connected through WABC. But he is still hardwired to Trump and still doing his bidding and dirty deeds if need be, I'm sure. But Roger Stone has won over a large portion of the MAGA movement, the conservative patriot movement. People want to, overlook his past. But then again, I see Bongino. People still are listening to Bongino. They're still listening to Bannon. They're pedophile protectors. They're done everything they could to conceal the truth. And people still want to be forgiving and just say, well, but they tell us some good things. They tell us, they share some things that they know. Again, I know that there's very few pure sources, that are not tainted in some way, that are not damaged goods. But there are better sources of information than Steve Bannon, Dan Bongino, Roger Stone, and even to a great degree, Alex Jones, even though his show has offered a lot of good information and intel because of the guest and even some of his analysis. But every time I listen, and I start listening more recently, I do it with a very jaundiced, very skeptical, critical eye and vantage point, because, he's going to slip in stuff based on his own opinions, some tainted sources. And so I just say, beware, be cautious, use great discernment. And I'm going to dig deeper into some of these other things, but this just kind of got me going. But these attacks by Trump on these MAGA influencers and podcasters and YouTubers and those that are trying to the best of their ability to tell us what's going on. They're having to dig deeper because we have a Trump administration, a Department of Justice and an FBI that won't do their job and that will only cover for Trump and will bury the bodies. And so we have to rely on this alternative media to try to solve these mysteries and to try to solve these crimes. And that's really where we are at. That's the sorry state of affairs. We'll be right back. Hold tight. Tom Donahue, Truth Matters.
Talk Right, the conservative app offered by TalkStream Live that caters exclusively to the conservative talk radio community. Here you'll see only talk shows and podcasts from the conservative right. All the big broadcast names and online digital shows in one place. Talk Right makes it easy to find all your favorite conservative talkers with all the upscale features you come to expect from TalkStream Live. Keep up with the fast-paced political world. Download Talk Right today from Google Play or the App Store.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have enjoyed a level of civility and prosperity. Wicked globalist operatives threaten it all. And the chaos around us is the result of an underlying spiritual war. See through the deception and discover the root of the world's conflicts. A startling new book from the host of the Truth Seekers radio show, Soulless Society. Available on Amazon in softcover, Kindle ebook, and Audible. Visit www.soullesssocietybook.com.
For every puppy purchased from a pet store or a breeder, a homeless dog at an animal shelter loses the chance of ever going for a romp in the park, chasing a ball, or feeling secure in a real home. Dogs and cats in shelters are waiting for someone kind to come along. So if you or anyone you know is ready for the responsibility of giving an animal a lifelong home full of patience, understanding, and respect, please adopt, don't shop. Visit PETA.org to learn more.
You're listening to Truth Matters and Tom Donahue Reports, where the truth really does matter, shedding light and insight on the prevailing controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies, always from an America First, patriotic, independent, conservative perspective. And be sure to listen each week at the same time. Also find out more about our show at TomDonahueReports.com, also available for podcast listen and download on all major podcast platforms. That's TomDonahueReports.com. Welcome back, Tom Donahue. Tom Donahue Reports, Truth Matters. So glad you are with us, and the truth really does matter here. And if you look at my banner at my website, one of the subtitles was "The Truth Really Matters." And it really does. And that's why in this iteration of this show, I thought that this was an appropriate title. And I'm glad to stay with that, even with Angeline Marie's departure as a co-host. She will be contributing reports very soon. Okay, back to the issues at hand. And since the last segment, there's been a lot happening that I want to get to. Trump goes on a jaw-dropping tirade against Pope Leo. Trump posed Jesus-like picture of himself performing a miracle on a sick man minutes after ramping up his feud with Pope Leo. To give full disclosure, I was raised as a Catholic in my early years. As a teenager, I rebelled, saw the hypocrisy in my view, and separated myself from Catholicism. Now, again, any pathway that brings you closer to God, to Jesus, I'm all for it. That was not for me. But I am a non-denominational Christian, a Bible-believing Christian. I believe in God Almighty, the Creator, his divine Son, Jesus Christ, who's also God, in my view, and the Holy Spirit. So I just wanted to make sure that if you're new or maybe I haven't brought it up enough, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Okay, I know Trump's surrounding himself with this woman minister and speaking in tongues. And again, I don't know enough about the speaking in tongues stuff, and I'm not even going to go there. And I do know that, the Catholic Church, I think Epstein would have fit in quite nicely, even though he and Bannon wanted to overthrow the Vatican, maybe to take control. Now, as far as I know, Epstein was into young girls, not young boys. So the Catholic Church might not have been the most fitting place for him. And again, I know there's good priests. I know there's good nuns. I know that there are a lot of good Catholics, and it's just that I have to, disclose my feelings about this, my sentiments. Okay, now, is it wise for the President of the United States to be feuding with a Pope, an American-born Pope? And the Pope has a right to speak out on spiritual matters. He's not getting into a particular political election. I mean, and I think everybody on this planet should be able to speak out when it's issues relating to war. Okay? Regardless of where you stand, you should not be silenced or censored. Trump has had other images that were godlike, that were really just ridiculous, nonsensical. I mean, he's one of the most unethical people on the planet. And to me, that is blasphemy. Even if he was a good man, it's still blasphemy to put yourself in any, and again, you say, well, he's got a sense of humor. Oh, so when he talked about the Obamas, as apes, that was okay. Now, I thought that was absolutely detestable, despicable, and that's the kind of person that we have in the White House. I used to say this about other presidents, but it's now become the outhouse. Well, even if you could find an outhouse because everything's being demolished. I shouldn't say everything, but this ridiculous ballroom and then this military secretive complex underneath, strange stuff. Well, Trump got cheered a little bit, but booed mostly at a UFC event. And for his 80th birthday, he's going to have the UFC cage fighting, ultimate fighting, gladiator style at the White House. And it'd be nice to see him get in the ring with someone, but, I mean, he is going to be 80, so I understand. And with those swollen ankles, probably not so good. We are back. Tom Donahue, Truth Matters, and it really does matter here. The former hillbilly, then Ivy Leaguer, didn't do so well with Jared and the crew trying to negotiate for 15 plus hours for the ceasefire holding up and a peace plan. And apparently it was all demands, no compromise, and that the Iranians were not going to buy into it. So Trump's already talking about bombing again. And even more so, he's saying we're going to blockade the Strait. Saturday Night Live, and I didn't watch the whole thing. I just saw a few clips, but they were talking about how Trump says they don't have any cards. Well, they have the Strait, like a Strait. I'm not a big card player, but I thought that was okay. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, I think some of the Trump impressions are pretty good. this gal that was doing the Melania impression, as she was like consulting with Trump about whether, she's going to do this Epstein speech, trying to exonerate herself and separate herself from all that. I'll tell you, her look, her mannerisms, the voice, it was pretty good. Because typically, now there was a brunette that used to do Melania years ago, and I can't remember her name now, but she was pretty good. And you got to have to Melania's credit, you got to be pretty good looking to try to imitate her. Democrat Raskin asked the White House physician for a comprehensive cognitive assessment of Trump. Well, there really should be. I mean, him talking about him taking a cognitive test and you can identify a bear or an elephant or, a chimpanzee. I mean, who knows what kind of test he's referring to, but it seems pretty simplistic. But Trump just came out in the last day or two and went after some of the top MAGA, America First podcasters, broadcasters that are, not on the Trump train. And he calls them nut jobs, low IQ troublemakers. And in that bunch, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Candace Owens. He lied about Tucker. Tucker does have a college degree. Doesn't matter to me whether he does or doesn't. Megyn Kelly, law degree, so she went beyond her bachelor's and she was a practicing attorney. Alex Jones, I don't know if he went past community college. I don't think he did. But it doesn't really matter because there's a lot of successful, smart people, street smart, that may not be necessarily book smart, or maybe they did, but they read their own books and not, some university or college syllabus or textbooks that were required for those courses. Now I don't even know if there's books because everything is digital and online. So apparently Alex Jones did a little parody where he went in and it's supposedly someone's evaluating his cognitive skills and his intelligence. And I have to admit, kind of funny. But that's one thing that if you listen to Trump, his repetitive speech, how often does he repeat himself over and over again? He's like the Sean Hannity of politics. It's so predictable, so redundant. And when someone's that redundant and they're not really spontaneous in terms of originality, you have to question their IQ. Now, when you come from wealthy parents and they're willing to donate to universities, you could get into almost any Ivy League school. That's just the way it works. So I doubt that Trump had the grades to get into University of Pennsylvania, but maybe he did. I've not seen any, typically you get leaks from these liberal elite universities, but I have not seen anything about Trump's grades. But yeah, I would put any of those influencers and podcasters up against Trump in a debate or a Jeopardy contest. Because I have said all along, because I try to be a fair evaluator, that Trump rarely has won any debate. He's tried to bully his way. He's tried to be disruptive. He's tried to be intimidating. He's tried to be, the master of name calling. But in terms of actual meat of the matter, of actually responding, with the facts, that actually is an eloquent speaker, that's not Trump. Now, does he have a knack for doing these rallies and the way he puts them on? And, he's got his writers and he's got his teleprompter and he can go off script too. But, he does have some skills. But to be attacking these people if you listen to the way Candace Owens speaks or Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly, even Alex Jones to some extent, you can tell that there's an intelligence there. You can tell that there's an education there. You can tell that they can run circles around Trump. And then Trump saying that they're failed and they're this and they're that. Trump went through 4 bankruptcies. Trump lost to Biden. No, it wasn't a stolen election. And I've documented that to the best of my ability. Just nonsensical, just completely ridiculous. But Melania Trump giving her little spiel and trying to separate herself from the Epstein files and her relationship. The photos tell it all. It's not like you're at like a memorabilia signing or, you have fans coming up and you take a selfie with this. They weren't even selfies back then. And you can see that they are snuggle close together, like double dating and schmoozing and just partying, and having fun. And there's just no doubt. And then you don't sign a letter, love Melania, and saying, looking forward to seeing you in Palm Beach. I mean, that's not an acquaintance. Okay. But I'll tell you, when she's saying that she wants to see justice for the survivors and they should testify, and that there are others beyond Epstein and Maxwell that should be held in account in so many words, that's reopening this. Now, Alex Jones goes as far as saying that, and I've said this too, that, there's no real romantic relationship there. It's a business relationship. It's been documented that she has her own apartment within Trump Tower. She doesn't, she would never sleep in the same room with him. And Hillary and Bill were the same way. And I think it's probably surely the same today. But he's thinking, and there's some others that are thinking that she is preparing her exit plan. And it could happen before his term is up. And so could there be a divorce, or at least a legal separation, because of wanting to get away from the madness and get away from, she knows how deep Trump has been involved in this whole Epstein mess. And she knows that porn stars and the movie stars and the beauty contestants and, all the different women that Trump was with, cheating on her, cheating on the other wives, how repugnant. He's just a reviled figure. Yeah, reviled reprobate. Okay. So J.D. Vance, he's glib, but he's not a persuasive person. He's not a likable person. And apparently his so-called negotiating and debate skills didn't work out so well. But J.D. Vance was off to Hungary, and he was campaigning and trying to swing the election for the incumbent, the Hungarian strongman, Viktor Orban. Not so successful because he lost. So he's over there. So he failed on two big missions that Trump sent him on, because Trump likes strongmen. Trump likes dictators. He likes tyrants because he's tyrant Trump, a dictator Don. Another failure. This is trending in this direction that those that are like Trump are gonna fail. Are gonna they're gonna falter. Well, I don't know what the third punch will be. Or the third strike, but we do know that he failed to in the re-election of the Hungarian strongman, and then he failed in negotiations with trying to negotiate a peace and a long-term ceasefire. 15 hours of his glib oratory didn't move the needle. I have a feeling, and again, it just a gut level feeling that Trump knew that he wouldn't be the most successful negotiator, that he would get on their nerves, and because Trump wants to bomb away, and he wants to slaughter, and because he wants to make Mark Levin happy, and Ben Shapiro, and the Israeli prime minister, and so that's ultimately what Trump wants to do. It's so funny. Trump was lobbying and pushing, and he's the man of peace, and he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. And now, if there was a prize for war, Trump would win. He would beat Putin. He would beat the communist dictators and the other world tyrants. So Trump is now the crowned king of neocons. Wow. And I'm starting to hear other people say this. And I never said I was MAGA. I always said I was America First, and I was America First before Trump actually borrowed or stole that term from Buchanan, from myself, from others in the early 1990s. But I appreciated people. And also that was a borrowed and stolen expression, MAGA, because it came from Ronald Reagan. Trump is completely unoriginal. There's no creative originality ever emanating from Trump's lips and from Trump's mangled brain. So we're now finding that MAGA is dead. It's a movement that Trump hijacked, and he ingratiated himself. He infiltrated, and everything about it was borrowed or stolen. And then he ran it off the cliff. He did a 180 flip. He's betrayed every principle. He's completely conned everybody because he's now a neocon. And so you have to declare, and I agree with this, and I've heard this from one or two other places, that MAGA is dead. And so it's about America First, and it's not about sloganeering. If you want to talk about slogans and catchphrases and name tags, I've been doing this for 3 decades. So, I don't even have to, I don't even have to sit down and try to dream up these catchphrases. They just come to me, or they're in my memory. So now we have basically 1984 newspeak, where war is peace and MAGA is neocon and America First is globalism on steroids. So that's where we stand. Going to take a break here. More to come. Hold tight. Tom Donahue, Truth Matters.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Conspiracy Radio, the new streaming station offering shows only from this unique, compelling genre. They don't want you to know, but we do. Conspiracy Radio, formerly Patriot Radio Classics, is now streaming 24/7 with the greatest conspiracy radio programs from past and present. Political to the paranormal cover-ups, conspiracies exposed. From legendary past hosts to groundbreaking present-day popular shows. Listen 24/7 online at conspiracyradio.net or download the apps at TalkStream Live, TalkStreamLive.com. Visit conspiracyradio.net. That's conspiracyradio.net. Conspiracy Radio. Follow the evidence. Question everything.
For every puppy purchased from a pet store or a breeder, a homeless dog at an animal shelter loses the chance of ever going for a romp in the park, chasing a ball, or feeling secure in a real home. Dogs and cats in shelters are waiting for someone kind to come along. So if you or anyone you know is ready for the responsibility of giving an animal a lifelong home full of patience, understanding, and respect, please adopt, don't shop. Visit PETA.org to learn more.
You're listening to Truth Matters and Tom Donahue Reports, where the truth really does matter, shedding light and insight on the prevailing controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies, always from an America First, patriotic, independent, conservative perspective. And be sure to listen each week at the same time. Also find out more about our show at TomDonahueReports.com. Also available for podcast listen and download on all major podcast platforms. That's Tom Donahue Reports. .com. Welcome back. Tom Donahue, Truth Matters, because it really does matter here. The final segment, let's get right to it. Erica Kirk cancels her interview with J.D. Vance at Turning Point USA event in Georgia, allegedly because of security threats aimed at her. If that were the case, why would J.D. Vance be there? And he spoke and he was interviewed by another associate, because if there was any realistic, viable, known threats, they would not have the vice president there, or they would have canceled the event. Well, you start digging a little deeper, and I know there's a lot of podcasters and social media influencers and program hosts that are digging much deeper than I am, and I appreciate that. But you look at the event, and by all estimates, this arena on this college campus was only about a quarter full, somewhere between 20 and 25%. And so there were many, 3/4 plus were empty seats. Well, more and more truth, in my view, is coming out about Erica Kirk, and her credibility has been shattered, and the organization has been shattered, and thus, why would she want to be a participant in a desolate, event, which is an embarrassment because Charlie always had big crowds. I mean, his crowds many times were larger than Trump's in terms of his campaign rallies. So J.D. Vance is humiliated once again, not only because of the empty arena and the fact that his gal pal didn't interview him, but he was heckled. People are starting to challenge the Iran war narrative and some of his actions and statements. So good for you, artist known formerly as Hillbilly. Did you ever look at J.D. Vance when he was doing those interviews on CNN? He was calling Trump Hitler, and he didn't have the beard, and he had the pudgy face, and he looks like something out of Deliverance. But then he, like Don Jr. and all, and Eric Trump, they all put these beards on, and I don't know what they're hiding, and they're trying to be more masculine. Yeah, he looked a little more like Porky Pig. Not that he was that heavy, but the face was very puffy, and that didn't include the mascara. And he does wear mascara around the eyes, which is, to me, quite odd. So Trump's at it again with these memes. He can't get enough of these insulting and blasphemous memes. An AI-generated image of Jesus playing the Trump card with his arm around Trump. At least this time, it wasn't Trump playing Jesus. Oh, but he said he was playing a doctor. Well, either is just insane. But no, everybody that has a functioning brain, unlike Trump, knows that the meme originally was depicting him as Jesus. And then even many in the religious community, especially the evangelicals, are trying to say, well, let's take him at his word. And if you really look at it, you could say it wasn't Jesus. It was. And it's blasphemy. Sorry, Reverend Graham. And I don't like, and I shouldn't even go there, but I don't like to use the word reverend in relation to any man that is acting on the behalf of God. Pastor, minister, and also I have an issue with father, because it says in the Bible, call no man father, but Father in heaven. So, that's another pet peeve of mine. The Pope continues advocating for peace, undaunted by the criticism from Trump and Vance. And speaking of the criticism, I mean, a Pope, any spiritual leader, any individual anywhere on the planet has a right to speak out about the origins of war and the rationale, the reasons, and the prayerful ending of any war. And so Trump wanted to be the man of peace and get all the peace prizes, but the Pope is actually truly speaking out and lobbying for peace, praying for peace, and the Pope gets criticized. Could you imagine? I mean, Trump and Vance critical of a religious or spiritual leader with the life decisions they're making? And I'm going to get to those Vance and Trump criticisms in a moment, but another headline breaking was Pope Leo warns tyrants are ravaging the world in the war of words with Trump. Remember, one of those catchphrases that I started many, many months ago was Tyrant Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene destroys pro-Trump evangelical Franklin Graham, defending the deleted Jesus pic, and calls out the absurd lie. The Hegseth, speaking of prayer, he says, pray with me. It's at this prayer service, and he's quoting a fake Bible verse, which actually came from the movie Pulp Fiction. So, I mean, you just can't make these things up. Governor Beshear says Vance is forgetting the commandments to not worship false idols and tells lies. Ted Cruz calls Tucker Carlson deranged, a leftist psycho, because he questions Israel and their involvement with the U.S. government and the war. Remember, Ted Cruz said his main goal to be United States Senator was to have the highest votes favoring Israel and to be the advocate for Israel. So that's his allegiance, his highest allegiance. So yeah, they say that many, many Catholics are deeply offended with his war with the Pope. And many, many devout Christians are now saying that Trump's actions with these memes is absolute blasphemy. So true. VP Vance tells Pope Leo to be careful, quote unquote. Tom Homan, the bagman that takes bribes, he says, leave politics alone. So you've got hypocrite, the bagman, tyrant that are all telling the Pope he can't speak out. Yeah. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens slammed Trump as a slave being controlled by an unknown master. Well, Trump has become, not only a con man, which we all kind of knew, and a grand betrayer, but he's a neocon, and he's the crown king of neocons. The neocon world are happily satisfied, and they're happy with his belligerent and bellicose rantings. I see Trump's actions as nefarious, despicable, and completely corrupted from the America First movement and the dead RIP MAGA movement. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us. TomDonahueReports.com is the website. This program is heard throughout the United States and the world through terrestrial stations, streaming stations, and podcasts on nearly every major platform and YouTube TV. And that's Tom Donahue Reports, the channel, and the handle is Truth Matters Radio. This week's edition of Truth Matters, Tom Donahue checking in with you. Till we meet again, have a great week.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have enjoyed a level of civility and prosperity. Wicked globalist operatives threaten it all. And the chaos around us is the result of an underlying spiritual war. See through the deception and discover the root of the world's conflicts. A startling new book from the host of the Truth Seekers radio show, Soulless Society. Available on Amazon in softcover, Kindle ebook, and Audible. Visit www.soullesssocietybook.com.
You're listening to Truth Matters and Tom Donahue Reports, where the truth really does matter, shedding light and insight on the prevailing controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies, always from an America First, patriotic, independent, conservative perspective. And be sure to listen each week at the same time. Also find out more about our show at TomDonahueReports.com, also available for podcast listen and download on all major podcast platforms. That's TomDonahueReports.com.